Hello, and all right, my mic is picking up, and we are off. Sorry for leaving up the just starting screen up for a while, but we were doing some setup for the match behind the scenes, and we're going for it. We are going for it. All right. Sorry for the little bit of delay. We are getting more technical things up as we made a lot of changes to the stream in the background since we've streamed last. Let's figure this out. All right, I think we are mostly okay right now, so we'll go with that. Mostly okay. All right. Bum. Okay. All right. Let's play this game now. We have Rook C8. Very interesting. We have pressure down the C file potentially. We'll take. Oh, hey, Aaron. Got a notification. That's nice. Thank you for popping in and out. Thank you for the good luck wishes. Have a good one, my friend. All right, we have our stream much more synced with real time, so hopefully today I'll be able to interact with the chat in much closer to real time. So we'll see how this goes and how my poor computer handles the stresses of streaming today. But we'll keep it rolling. We will keep it rolling. All right, so probably mass exchanges here, and I'm not against mass exchanges, but he seems to be going for a bishop versus knight position where I get this isolated d pawn, and I'm not opposed to that, as my d pawn is quite nice. And thank you, Aaron. Yeah, I spent a lot of time working on the camera. I didn't get a new one, but I just worked a lot with the filters that I had and changed it with me being in a different room. So I'm a lot happier with how it looks now, so yeah, hopefully the chess will be higher quality as well today versus last time where we played absolutely horrendously. All right, let's try to figure out what's going on here. I guess the idea is if we can ever push d5, that's really nice. Oh, the pawn is technically hanging. I wouldn't be opposed to the move queen f4. Queen c4 is also seemingly a decent move. I think I'll play for queen to c4 here. Defends the pawn and pushes for a d5 advance at some point. And we'll see what happens. I feel like we're quite happy. We have a slightly better position here because of the bishop versus knight imbalance, and see how this goes. Queen c8. Not entirely sure what that's about. I can play rook c1, and we will create some chaos down the c file. We could push d5 here immediately. That would be very nice. Pushing d5 immediately takes with a bishop. And that would get rid of the biggest problem in the position, which would be the isolated d pawn. d5, if captures with knight, captures with bishop, yeah, I don't think this is an issue. And if the queens get traded, queen takes on c4, queen takes on c4, then the position is also quite nice. So there we go, d5, and we're going straight into it here. E takes on d5. Bishop takes on d5, and I feel like this setup is slightly better for us. Because the f7 pawn is weak for him, and now we just have to figure out how to deal with it here. Almost considered blundering the queen. That probably would not have been smart. Let me see if I can get a little bit more right here. How can we move this around, though? The idea of playing queen to b5 looks nice. I think we'll go for this, queen b5. And yeah, I think that's a little bit too much light. We still have to figure out just how much light the camera will hold for us. Queen c2, a4. We'll start pushing on the queen side, see if we can create some sort of weakness. And yeah, we'll see how this goes. We will. Yeah, this goes. Our bit rate seems to be holding steady, really nice. We're really close to real time, so I'd say we've made a bunch of technical improvements. If he comes after the pawn, we can always get on the offensive against his king as well as playing the defensive rook e3. And the position is quite solid. And I know that Dan's a 1706, but he really should be much higher rated in rapid than he is. Rook d1. Do we just take the draw here, queen e8, and check, 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 and such? Do we just take the draw, queen e8, and run? Or do we defend the rook? I'm not a big fan of defending the rook here, to be honest. The best move seems to be queen e8. And king g7. Give another check for good measure. And yeah, the idea is I would love to be able to go queen to e3 with check. And if we're able to play queen to e3 with check, then I would be quite happy with the position. We'll just repeat the check here. He has to come forward to g7, and we repeat on e5. And he really must come up the board to avoid the draw, but when he comes up the board and puts his king eventually on h6, we get our queen to e3 with check in, which simultaneously defends the rook and defends the pawn. And the question is Mr. Dan Frank going to go for it? No. I'll take the draw here. I think I was in a slightly worse position, and it was the first game of the match. We were still getting settled in, and we'll start game 2. We know that he likes to play Smith-Morra, and we have some special theory prepared for him in the Smith-Morra. Bishop to c4 is probably coming. Then, that's main line, a6, and we have theory. We are just bashing out theory right now. Castles, pawn b5. All theory, bishop to b3 is the move he's most likely to play here. Boom. Bishop b7, and we have our prep against Dan. I am very happy in these kinds of positions generally as black is quite solid, and it is difficult for white to break through the very solid formation here. Bishop to f4. I have seen this before in the prep, and I believe the correct response here as black is to go knight ge7, and we'll simply see how this goes. Knight ge7. Idea is to play knight to g6. The disadvantage of this bishop to f4 line in the Smith-Morra is knight to g6 will come with tempo on the bishop, and I'll be able to get my pieces out with better tempo. All right. Things are looking excellent, technically, so I say we barge ahead. Knight g6 hits the bishop, and bishop e7. Position is very, very solid, and very, very decent position for black to play. What black will do is start gradually centralizing the pieces and start eventually putting a little bit of pressure on the white position. White will probably have to push something in the future, and that should be good enough to start a confrontation on black's terms. Knight to d4. The move I'm primarily thinking about is queen to b6, as takes gets met by takes with anything really, and our d7 pawn is very solidly protected. And since white has already committed the bishop to g3 in this line, queen to b6 is generally a thematic move, or at least in the theory that I typically play. Queen b6, and almost any capture on c6 if takes is just fine for black. I'll take with the bishop, as now we could potentially play rook c8 and rook d8, and kind of just enjoy the position of pawn up, as white really doesn't have any obvious ways of applying pressure to our position. Bishop d6. I will exchange that as well. Let's just see if we can flip the board for a second. And yeah, I'd say this is happy. This is a nice position overall. Rook a to c8, so we have a very solid position overall. It'd be difficult for Dan to break through this, and I think the extra pawn will be very nice in the long run for us. Knight e2. I'm not so sure I like this move from Dan, because now I simply take the pawn on e4, and you will take the pawn on d7, and that trade is very nice for me, because now the base pawn chain here. Oh, I'm an idiot. Okay, I was going to blunder my queen there. Okay, let's figure out ways to not blunder our queen here. Queen to c7 forces something to be done. If takes, takes. Knight g3. Yeah, that's certainly an idea. What other things do we have here in this position? We could play rook d8, queen c7, queen b8. You could play queen back to d8, queen f6, or queen e7. I think I prefer the queen trade, though, to be honest. And oh yeah, I have to update the match score. This is always something that I forget to do during the games. You'll see a little bit of live action Streamlabs OBS, and all right, there we go. Brilliant. And he has retreated with queen to d2. Very interesting. I want to push the queen a little bit forward here. Queen e5. Queen e5, and you have to play f3, no? I think on this one I'm playing rook fd8. It just seems like a solid move and appears to push the pawn at some point in the future. Oh, rook ed1. Okay, this is very nice for me, I think, because now this allows me to play queen e5 a lot easier, and then the rook is not on the e-file. Cause me problems. We will re-centralize the queen, and now we can start pushing a little bit ourselves. We can play against the pawn on e4. We can play for the d5 pawn break, and I think we have a very decent position. Okay. This pawn is threatening just to be snapped off, so you have to defend it, and defending it of some sort probably allows me to push the pawn to d5. And once that happens, then it seems like I have quite a decent position again. Well, I already think we have a position, but at least better. Improvement. Okay, f3. So now the question is, can we push this pawn to d5? Captures with the pawn. Captures with the bishop. Captures with bishop. Captures the rook. d5 takes, or captures, 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 captures. Yeah, this works, I believe. d5. And hello to Sekwoko, the chief lurker over here. And don't worry. Yeah, the good news, Sekwoko, is I did get my stream upgraded a little bit, so I'll be able to interact with you a little bit sooner if you want to say something, as opposed to last time where it maybe took 30 seconds, but technical improvements. And yeah, Sekwoko, I'll just catch you up a little bit on what you missed. If you missed game one was kind of a snooze fest. A lot of the pieces were traded off early in, I believe it was called the Neo Grunfeld. It was that opening. A lot of the pieces were traded off early, and we just settled for a perpetual check before move 30, I think. So not much happened. This game is perhaps more exciting. Okay, thank you for saying that, Sekwoko. Yeah, there was a pretty significant delay the last time. And it seems like we have traded off our biggest problem, the pawn on d7, and now if it is captured, I grab his pawn on b2, and we have a very nice position going into an ending. If he moves the pawn, potentially, to b3, we can just come over rook d8 or knight e7 and defend this puppy, and we will have a very nice game. Knight c3. Very interesting. Very interesting. The temptation is to push the pawn, but it gets shot, so don't do that. Huh. 97. Knight takes on d5. Knight takes on d5. Queen takes on d5. Queen takes on b2. There seems to be no major problem here. And... oh, shoot. Okay, never mind. We have a problem. Never mind. There's a problem. A rather serious one of back rank mate. We're catching these today. Queen takes on d5, queen takes on b2, loses to queen to d8, check. Okay. So, option 1. We just trade the queens and play anything. g6, something. Or option 2, we keep the queens on the board with something like queen to e3. I'm down to enter a straight rook ending. But queen e3 also seems like a nice move. Queen e3, I don't like king f1 because it seems like that king gets in a little bit too much danger for something like g6. Yeah, I think we'll go check. Yep. Queen to e3 with check. King h1 probably incoming, and now we play g6. And we have ourselves a game. Our pieces are slightly more active. Unfortunately, we did give the pawn back. But that's all right. Queen to e3 was ambitious, yes. But also, I'm a very terrible endgame player under pressure. And it seems like, to me, I have better chances to win the game if the queens stay on the board. And it seems like my pieces can just get a little bit more active in this setup. So I was in favor. h4. h4. Why h4? Because that seems to lose a pawn to queen to f2. Oh. Okay, queen to f2 chases my queen away from the defense of the e5 pawn. Okay, that makes sense. I also have a secondary threat. I could play rook c4, threatening mate. And now if check here, all of the key squares are covered and he has to defend. This seems to be a very decent move. And I'm also having to manage the light because we evidently have clouds rolling in. But yeah, I think I like the way that this looks. This looks a lot better. Okay. What's the defense against mate here? Obviously, you could play g3. Doesn't seem like the greatest move in the world. You could play check, but I don't really see what you do after check. Very interesting position to defend here. He could defend it with the queen, queen g5. But in that scenario, I would just trade the queens off and play rook c2, and I would have a great position. And I think I could win that. So he has some defenses. Which defense shall Mr. DanFrank choose? It is all up to him. All right. Queen g5. Okay. Like I said, I think I can win this if I trade the queens. Queen takes g5, h takes on g5, rook c2 is the most obvious, because if rook d6, I play a5, and I like the position a lot. Put the rook on a second rank. Sequoko, I trust your judgment, because if we learned anything from last week, when I played quite terribly, that you seemed to be able to calculate things much better than I did. Okay, so rook d6, like we said, the move a5 seems to be much better for white, a5. And if rook a6, we play a4. Right on cue, rook a6, a4. b3, we play rook takes on a2. You know what, let's take a little bit of time here. We could play takes, rook b2, but that allows the defense of rook a3, b4, we still win the pawn. Okay. So how can we win the pawn best? If I want a pawn, I think it's going to be an outside passed pawn, so that's why I'm playing rook takes on a2. If I were him, I think you have to take the pawn on a4. Correct. I would say I would take this with the pawn. Yes. Take with the pawn, and then the plan is to play king to g7, h6, takes, and play this position, as I think that his pawns are just not in a good position. Here on the king side, it looks a little bit awkward, and of course he has the major problem of the passed pawn out here on a4. Okay, king f4. We could play g5 with check. I really want to play g5 with check, but I can't. I feel like the king is a liability out here where it is. I'm going to bring it back. King g7, g4, okay. a3, and now we'll try to put a little bit of pressure on him. And I'm an idiot. Why did I allow him to push g5? I don't think there's anything better than a draw here for us, to be honest, because I'm not going to be able to do anything. He can just shuffle his rook on the A file all he wants, and I don't think I can achieve anything. Yeah, rook A7. What we could try is we could try bringing the king up the board, but there's really no way for us to achieve that because he can just cut us off wherever he wants. King E5 seems to be the move that makes the most sense to me. Rook E1 check, King F4. And I don't see anything better than a repetition. That's interesting. Rook A7. I did not expect that. I did not expect Rook A7. You check again, now I go King D5. And we just start running toward the pawn. I think he has to move his king to the E file now. Either square may be okay, but I would prefer King E4. Then Rook E1, King F4, probably back. That's right, Sakuoko. There would be potential tricks with that, but I think we both understood this during the game. You don't really have to take the pawn on A4. You could wait for me to push the pawn to A3. In those scenarios, I'm not totally sure if that was much better. Rook A7, A2, and here we go. Now the F7 pawn is most definitely off limits. Yeah, it's just cheap stuff and time pressure. That's what that trick is. So his king is in a good position here, because on the f-file it's completely shielded from checks. What we could try to do is either A, force the king off of the f-file, or B, force the rook, let my king in. Right now, I feel like we're getting in with the king. Maybe B4 would have been better, but okay, now he's just checking. I could hide myself on F2. That would be quite funny. Rook A7. But there's no way to get the king cover. All right, let's try plan B. Like we aren't going to lose this by any stretch. Yeah, but he might not let us pull it off. Uh, we're gonna try to go down this road again. Well, we have a different idea. Bringing the king all the way around. um... Okay. This is all just cheap stuff and time pressure. I probably had a better winning chance at some point in this ending. Not sure where. Now by king h2, we're threatening rook to g1 check. So he has to move the king now. Chooses f4, now we play king h3. And can we zugzwang him away from this somehow? Because now we play king h4. But this is also dangerous because we're also putting ourselves in kind of a mating setup. Yeah. We have to go back because he can take on f7 there. I declined the draw, but I think I might just have to settle for a repetition. Yeah. Okay. Let me update the score really quickly. One. He goes for an England gambit. This is very interesting. I don't know if this was a mouse slip or if this was something he had prepared, because this is just totally strange. This is just so strange. F6. Okay, bro. Fight. Okay, what's the policy here with the placement of the e-pawn? Because where we place the e-pawn matters. Let's see. Yeah, Sequoko, I considered him doing that, but there really was no need. He would obviously be risking a lot in that line, and it just doesn't sound like something you would go for in the match setup like this, because if you miscalculated somewhere and I end up winning that game, or I just win the king and rook versus king and pawns ending, even if I win that, now you have to win on demand as black. And I think I would totally defend his match strategy there because he has the draw in the bag and he should just keep the draw. Yeah, incorrect. Rook takes f7 was only good with my king on h4 because then he had the mate threat of rook h7. And that's what enabled him to be able to do that. I think we'll elect to put our pawn here on e3. I really never enter into this line as white, even though I have had people play the England Gambit against me, so I have no clue how this line is supposed to go. But h4 seems to be the best square for the bishop. I don't think pushing the g... What? Okay. This looks suicidal. The massive temptation is to just take this. But I think I'm going to play principled chess here. I know I need to win the match, but by playing g5, I think you've given me enough of a target to go for here, and I think I'm going to be perfectly happy. We could have played check, but he has the response of d5 now. So we're going to play a more restrained bishop to d3. Play queen to e2, castle queenside, and just completely pulverize Dan on the king side. Because Dan is already down a pawn, and he got very aggressive with those kingside pawns. We could just castle queenside and just try and absolutely wipe him out. All right, here we go. Queen d2. Castle's long. Pushing on the queen side. We'll see what happens. Now, I don't think he has the move knight to d5 because of bishop c4, and I think he just loses that knight. So I don't think he'll be able to double my c-pawns anytime soon. I really think this is a good position for white to play. Queen e7. Not entirely sure what that does. Come after me, Dan. We're castling long and we're just coming to kill your king. Next order of business is to play h4 and just start hitting the pawns. Because one thing that is a slight problem here, the bishop is actually potentially out of the way, or potentially in the way of the pawn. Because if I want to play h4, he might want to play g4 to try to keep lines closed. Here we go, h4, and the attack starts. Just threatening to take off the g-pawn. This feels like an unnecessary concession. It smells like an unnecessary concession here. I don't buy that his continuation was good. h5 even. We establish a forever outpost for the bishop here on g6. We're going to play rook g1, and basically just try to kill him. um, all right. Now we take on e5. He takes with the knight. We play rook g1. If he takes with the queen, we could play rook g1. All right, the question is, which rook do we want on g1? I would say that h rook would be the better piece. Not sure, though. Not entirely sure. I feel like it's the h rook that goes there. The other rook might find a nice home on f1. All right, Dan has had a couple internet issues thus far, so we'll hope that doesn't continue happening. Chess.com is telling me that he's disconnected, reconnected a couple times during the course of the game. If this, Sequoko, if this ends in a draw, we just blame Vlad, because that's all we do, because Vlad draws all of his matches. And we'll just blame Vlad. Bishop g6, check. Knight takes, rook takes. Looks like an amazing position. And Sequoko, you can't say if this does end in a draw, Sequoko, you can't say we didn't try to win the games. Like, game one was a little bit of a snooze fest, and you could say that I was happy with the draw because it was game one and I was getting things set up on the stream and things like that. Game two, we went at it. It was a Smith-Morra gambit with good prep from both sides. And we fought. I blundered the pawn back, and we had a perhaps, hopefully, very instructive rook ending. This game also is very exciting. He's gambited everything going for it, basically. I don't think this will work out. I don't exactly agree that it would be a travesty, Sequoko, because that would just be the way the game ended. I don't really think of chess in terms of travesties or not, but okay, so he has taken on g6. This is a terrible position for him, I think. We just play rook takes on h6 here. What does he do? All right, rook takes on h6. Is he going for basically the exact same setup as last game? That would be funny, but no thank you, Dan. I'm taking here with the pawn. I want queens on the board. Your king is not safe, Dan. Things will still be interesting. His queen is kind of also glued to where it is. If I play... Oh, that would be sick. If I played f4... Oh, he can't take now. Oh, I completely missed that. f4, he can't take on e3 because the queen is disconnected from the rook. Very nice. I think this position we can win. Because we're up 2 points. Okay, deep breath, queen c5. I play queen to d4. And he goes check, back. He can't keep checking. So this feels like I risk very little by playing queen to d4. His king is still not in a very good position. What? Oh, and Sukoko, you just can't see it because Dan just typed in the chat. Oh, that's one way to do it. Yes. Uh, that's one way to do it. I finally win a match. I have not won a match since week 1. So we are excited. And Sukoko Dan also said, I picked up my queen and let go. GG's. Thank you, Dan. That will do it. That will do it. Updated score, HSB 2, Dan 1. Very nice, very nice. I want to do a little bit of analysis on this game, just to kind of see what happens, but... By the way, if I had played h takes on g6, maybe it would have run into a fork. That's what we're going to try to find out, Sokwoko. I think I have a analysis set up, which I do. Yeah, h takes on g6 did look really nasty for him. Let's check that position out, just for the betterment of our chess. I believe the position was here. Oh boy, look at this computer eval. Computer eval is sky high. Played bishop to g6, which was a good move. Knight takes on g6, which just had to happen. And it turns out that the computer likes my move. Of rook takes on g6. Let's see what the computer says after h takes. King g8, and I think I understand why the computer thinks this is actually better than the position black got in the game, because here the g file stays closed, and the king doesn't really go for a king walk, and king can almost use this g pawn as a shield. So by playing rook takes on g6, the idea was I'm creating the really lethal threat of queen to d5 check, which has to be guarded against. And also this h-pawn is falling, which would leave me up a pawn, up 2 pawns. And this would just be good enough. So he played queen e5, which was a good move. I grabbed with pawn on h6, not the best. Takes, king e7, f4, the best move, since he can't capture on e3. queen c5, queen d4, and he just blundered here as that I just picked up the piece and let it go, and that was it. Queen d5. Yeah, his position is terrible anyway, because even if you exchange the queens here, this position is going to be horrible for him to play. He's down 2 pawns in a double rook ending. My rook on h6 is very active. Pawns are already starting to march up the board. This e-pawn is very easily defendable, and I would say that would be basically curtains for him. But yeah, there we go. Let's just post the results in Discord. All right, there we go. Results have been posted in Discord. Oh, that's an interesting thought, Sequoko. Let me check that. If he goes queen a3, I could just go king d2 and let him take on a2 and play rook g1. That is an idea. I'm not the most aggressive player, so sacrificing this pawn isn't something that I would typically do. This is certainly obviously very playable, probably still winning for whites. I would have just played king to b1 in the game because he has no checks. And we're still up 2 pawns, and I think we find that here the queen is a bit out of the game. And it's not super easy to bring it back in without basically saying that he's lost a tempi by playing something like queen a5, queen. But yeah. So that's the end of the match for today. That'll be the end of the stream. Sequoko, if you could be so nice as to hang around for the raid. We are going to try to raid Vlad. And I hope that you enjoyed today's package of games, and we will be raiding Vlad.